Hello, everyone. This is Zach at FF Triple Batman, and this is Beyond the Analyst for Triple Play Fantasy, part of the Fantasy Points Media Group. Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Howard Bender. How's it going, Howard?
Very, very good. I hope my wife is now watching this. I don't think I've ever been described as wonderful. So I like that. Thank you so much.
We'll have to add it to your Twitter bio. But for those of you who have not tuned in before, make sure you go ahead, like, subscribe. Make sure you follow the Triple Play Fantasy team. A lot of great content coming out there, not just football. We're talking baseball, basketball, movies, food. We got it all with Triple Play. But we are here to get to know Howard a little bit better beyond his fantasy takes. I'm sure Howard has a lot of great stuff when it comes to baseball, football, all of that. Is the off season right now for football, but there's enough takes out there. We want to get to know Howard a little bit better beyond the Analyst. So this is season 2. If you missed season 1, go back and check the playlist. We had 30 interviews last off season, and we got a lot more coming out this off season. So thank you for joining us. So Howard is part of Fantasy Alarm. He is the head of content. He's also the host of the Fantasy Alarm show on SiriusXM Fantasy Radio and the Cash It podcast. And he's a sports writer for the New York Post and Pickswise. So you do it all, Howard, and you cover not just football but baseball too, correct?
Yeah, I'm a two-sport athlete right now. I do football and I do baseball. I leave the basketball and the hockey to people who actually know what they're talking about.
Doing two sports is still crazy, in my opinion, anyway, especially since they overlap all the time, even if it doesn't feel like they do sometimes. There's no off season, in my opinion, with either sport. So how did you start playing fantasy sports?
I think I started playing fantasy sports when I was I guess it was like some Stratomatic in junior high. A friend of mine's dad was kind of a baseball nerd at that point, and kind of got me and my friend Adam into it, and so we started in that realm. Yeah, and then I kind of I played in a league with them, like a regular fantasy league through high school. Went off to college and kind of let it go because it was just I was in college and I was drinking heavily and living the college life, and who had time for fantasy baseball at that point. But I guess it was really funny in the mid to late 90s. I used to play in this rotating poker game in New York, and we would meet at different apartments, and there were about 7 or 8 of us in there, and one of them, his dad, was starting up a brand new fantasy baseball league, and his original league had kind of fallen apart, so he was trying to recreate it, and so he basically came to us and said, "Is anybody interested?" I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'll definitely play some fantasy baseball. I haven't played in forever, but I know it." And so yeah, everybody at the poker table joined. And this was then like the internet boom happened for fantasy sports, and it just went absolutely crazy. And that was probably, yeah, it was like right around there, 98, 99, when I ended up starting up my own blog to say, to just kind of write about it, because I was working as a working as an actor and stand-up comic in New York City, but I was mainly a bartender, and I would do my set behind the bar anyway. So, I was doing all of that, but I hated going out on the auditions, and then I hated, the whole sitting around until 3 o'clock in the morning, and getting to play the room for like 2 people who were obviously wasted, and just there to heckle. So it kind of frustrated me a little bit off of that, and so yeah, I just started writing on my own, until I started sending my links out and got into the industry itself, from there. So yeah, junior high started playing, and yeah, it was probably in my, I don't know, mid to late 20s, probably late 20s, when I really started to try and just kind of work at this.
That's awesome. Now, I would guess so. I missed the pre-internet for fantasy sports. I was alive, but I just wasn't playing yet. How significantly different was it going from? I mean, you're checking the newspaper for box scores, and I mean, you're kind of. I would assume you're probably some kind of phone calls, and I've even heard people doing faxes of like the updating the results. How different was it from to go into that to having websites and apps for our leagues?
Well, when we were playing in high school, it was, you would swing by, my friend's dad kept all the stats, which was great. Like that, we didn't have to do it, because, you just see the paperwork and everything. You have to grab a copy of USA Today and get all the updates and the weekend scores and all the box scores, and you go through it all. And it was very, very labor intensive. For us, it was great. We would just like head over to my buddy's house on like Monday morning before the games even started, and we'd get our copy of like the updated standings and sheets like that. We'd kind of talk through school and see what we were doing, make sure our lineups were all set for the upcoming week. So I mean, it was a ridiculous amount of work. To any like old school commissioner out there, you have my props. You got my love. You've got my admiration for doing it. I thought about trying to help out, and it was like a disaster. I mean, you're like going blind, reading the paper, trying to figure it all out. So I was never a commissioner back then, not for fantasy baseball. For fantasy football, I was a commissioner pre-internet, and it was, it was fun. It was entertaining, but it was much less labor intensive to get that done. So the internet saved us. It saved us in a major way. I mean, all those dudes out there with like carpal tunnel syndrome, just their fingers all look like this. You could always tell an old school commissioner, he's like this, he's all arthritic and bitter.
We need that on like a t-shirt, like that graphic with like, I was an old school fantasy commissioner.
Let's call Kenny over at RotoWare, huh? Kenny, we just need a picture of this.
There you go. Take a screenshot. Yeah, I do remember I started in high school, and that was before apps were really a thing for fantasy sports, but it was still the website. So my league was mostly like dads in my neighborhood, and I was like the oldest kid in the neighborhood, so they let me play with my dad as well. And they got upset because I had a computer lab class on Wednesday mornings. And so I beat everybody to the waiver wire every Wednesday morning because I just happened to have access to a computer then. So it frustrated them. But that was, we didn't have apps back then to just preload our pickups and all that. So I still remember that. But yeah, we've come a long way.
Funny that you say that. Like, I was tending bar in New York City for, years and years before I was working in this industry full time. And I would get home from work at, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, right when Yahoo was doing their updates. And so I would immediately just hit that waiver wire, because they didn't have Fab back then. It was all still like first come, first serve waivers. And all the old, everybody would get all pissed off at me for picking all the top guys off the waiver wire at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we were grinding way back then.
Yeah.
And now, do you have a preference of a fantasy sport that you play? Is it baseball or football, or is there something else?
No, I you know what? I don't really have a preference. I love both. I love both fantasy. I mean, fantasy baseball. Baseball's always been my first love. I grew up in New York City. I grew up as one of those kids that those cliche kids you see in movies who are scraping change together with their buddies so that they can go buy bleacher seats over at Yankee Stadium. I mean, I lived with my grandparents, and they were on they were East 80th in York, so it was like 6 subway stops away from from Yankee Stadium. It was like a nice little trip on the express train up there. And that was like back then you could do it. Back then you could be an 8 or a 9-year-old kid and take the subway with your friends by yourself, and it didn't really matter. So, baseball's always been my first love. Fantasy football, I dig it. I really do. Because I like rotisserie fantasy baseball as opposed to head to head. Then I get that head to head outlet for fantasy football, and all that smack talk that goes along with the weekly stuff. Well, I mean, it's FF Chalupa Batman. So you're obviously a big fan of the league, and obviously a big fan of the smack talk in fantasy football.
Absolutely.
So
that's great. That makes sense. Good balance between two different styles of fantasy sports.
Sure. What's that?
So I think I'm going to cut off. Do you have any hobbies outside of fantasy sports?
Ooh, hobbies outside of fantasy sports. I'm not dying because I'm this old. How about that? It's my number one hobby. No, I don't. I don't really care if I go or not. It's been a hell of a ride. I'm a big music guy. Everybody who knows me associates me with the band Fish, and I've been to I don't know well over 300 shows in my time for them. But like I was a Deadhead. In high school I was it was like heavy metal. And then in college, it like gravitated towards, classic rock. But like when I was, I was 16 when I went to my first Dead show. So, I was like very much an avid lover of music. I love going to live shows. And, the funny thing about it is that I don't really care who I'm seeing. I really don't. I've always been of that mindset that if you have the opportunity to go see an iconic performer, you go see that iconic performer. I remember I was tending bar in New York City, and a guy, who had come in, I'd known him for a while. He was recently divorced, and he was like trying to get back out there. And he's like, yeah, a guy in my office, offered me a ticket to go see Neil Diamond at the Paramount Theater next to Madison Square Garden. He's like, but I don't know if I'm going to go. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't know if you're going to go. It's Neil freaking Diamond. Like the dude's just going to pump out hit after hit after hit after hit, and it's going to be a great time. Not to mention the fact that you're in your late 40s, you're divorced. What's the demographic of women who are there? Divorced 40 and 50-year-old women. They're going to see Neil Diamond. They want to go and they want to get their drink on. They want to cry during Love on the Rocks. They want to pump their fist to Sweet Caroline and do that. So, go. You have to go see every iconic artist you get the opportunity of to see, because it's an amazing experience. Ironically, he met a woman there who then became his second wife. So I take full credit for that one out there. All right. And Charlie, if you are watching this, I remember, dude. I definitely remember, and say hi to the wife for me. So, all sorts of music, for me. Like I'm like zipping through TikTok and watching like all these like Taylor Swift clips. I'm like, you know what? I would go see, if it didn't cost 10 grand a ticket, I would go see Taylor Swift. Why not? I've seen everything from like Tom Jones and Wayne Newton in Vegas, to, I mean, everything, Elton John, Prince, Lionel Richie, all across all sorts of platforms there. I don't know if I'd go with the country music route unless it's Blake Shelton, because he seems pretty cool and I could kind of dig on his vibe. But I'll go see anything just to do it that way. That's probably like the biggest hobby or outside interest that I have, just out of the sports realm. Like you said, sports takes up an insane amount of my time. So going to games is always, big for me. But yeah, it's, doing the, going to live music, hanging out with my dogs. I am a very, very big dog lover, animal lover in general. But my wife and I, we have 3 dogs, husky mixes, wolf hybrids. And that's kind of that's kind of how we do it. Man, I'm 52. The days of other outside hobbies, it's like I'm trying to fall asleep by like 9 o'clock at night, for crying out loud. So I don't really know if there's much room for anything beyond that.
No, I get it. I mean, I'm 32 and I'm like, I have work and my kids, and then fantasy football is my hobby. So I understand it. And I would love to fall asleep by 9 o'clock.
I mean, I don't do it intentionally, and believe me, once you start doing that, the elbows from the wife and the yelling that happens. Like, why are you getting so mad that I'm nodding off during this show? Clearly, it's not keeping my interest here, sweetheart. I love you, but I'm going to bed. That's just it.
I totally understand that. It may happen from time to time when I'm watching a show on Netflix. But I was going to ask you about Taylor Swift when you were talking about all the concerts, since she's been the hot artist for a long time now. But I think we need to win a massive DFS game to be able to go to one of those concerts.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. My wife and I, we used to own a live music venue out here in San Francisco. Born and raised New York City. In 2007, we moved out to San Francisco, and inside like 2 years, about 2 years of being here, she got a job as a general manager at a live music venue. And then and then the owner sold it to us a couple of years after that. So like this venue, I mean, the music is not anything my speed. There's a lot of EDM, a lot of DJs, but it was a lot of this like synth pop and stuff like that, and a lot of pop music. So up and coming it was crazy. Like I saw Vampire Weekend, Florence and the Machine. We booked Lady Gaga right before she crazy blew up. She was doing this tour. She blew up unbelievably. And then was like selling, and like, I think it was probably 2 months after her scheduled appearance at the club at Mezzanine, she had already sold out Madison Square Garden. And so, we were like, well, she was like, well, can we do a second show here? And, my wife was like, yeah, of course we can. Made the whole thing happen. During her first show, my wife called me up. She's like, you got to get down here. She's like, you have to see this woman. It's amazing. It's the new Madonna. You want to check it out. So I was like, all right, great. And did that. So, yeah. So I've actually seen like all of these, all these bands now. And I mean, things like Phoenix played, and I'm trying to remember like all the bands that my nephew like is really into. He's in his early 20s. So, I mean, like he went bonkers when we started talking about, some of the people who are playing at the club. So yeah, it's all about the music, man. It's all about the music. It keeps me happy. It keeps me sane, but I will, I'll still I'll take, Phil Lesh and Bob Weir and the remaining Grateful Dead members, and I'll take Fish all day long.
That's great. Now, do you listen to a lot of music while you're creating content, or do you need like silence when you're doing your research?
It depends on the piece that I'm working on. Like it really does. Like, I mean, if I'm doing like waiver wire stuff or injury stuff, then it's, it's kind of like, beep, 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 beep. And I'll listen, I'll have something on. I'll usually put on like a Fish show that, there it's like 3 hours long, and there's a lot of jamming going on there, and I'm not really like focused in on the lyrics. So it kind of sits in the background. But if I'm doing like a hardcore analysis piece and I'm really trying to like stay focused in there, then I'll go with like complete silence, and then I'll put on music for the rest of my day.
That makes sense. Now, the fantasy industry is continuing to evolve. It feels like it's been accelerated the last, I would say 10 or so years. What do you think is your greatest challenge in the fantasy space?
I think it's really, I think it's making the switch to video work. I think that's really kind of what it comes down to. I mean, I'm okay just riffing off the top of my head, and when I'm on the radio, I can just sit there and talk through my thoughts. But the hard hit videos, the quick hitting videos that you have to do on platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff like that. That's really, I think that's kind of where I need to get better. I need to get better on the technical side. I could sit there and I can just record something and send it to somebody and be like, make a TikTok out of this. And they'll do that. But I always feel like when I do a video recording, I've got the vision in my head of what I want it to come across as or to see. So yeah, I think it's really, it's kind of, it's hitting those moments, of like doing the actual recordings, making myself pretty for the camera, stuff like that, actually like combing down the beard and whatever. But like I've always, that's what one of my biggest issues was when I moved out here to San Francisco. In 2007, I knew that I was going to have to keep up with East Coast news. And so that has had me up, at 4:30 in the morning so that I could kind of wipe the crusties out of my eyes and, grab a Red Bull because I don't drink coffee. And then kind of go and sit and just kind of catch up on the news from the night before and anything that I might have missed. And so, so in the mornings, it's like the tough time to create videos because I look like crap. And, it's like, not to mention the fact that I used to actually be skinny back in the day. And then all of a sudden I started grinding in fantasy sports over and over and over again. And then I never left my desk. And all of a sudden I just got fat, which doesn't play on the video very well either. So it looks like I ate 16-year-old Howard Bender. That's what it looks like right now. So I think I need to get better with that. I need to get skinnier. I need to get better looking. Maybe shave the white beard and start getting into to some better video work on all those platforms, because that really is, those short, quick hit reels are really what everybody wants now. Nobody has time or wants to read a 2,500 word article.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the data, it's crazy. Some of the views that YouTube Shorts, or like you said, the IG Reels or TikToks, like, I mean, you could put out a 30-second video and you're getting 1,000 views in 30 minutes, and that's on a small group. So it's definitely impressive what's going on, but it's like you said, a very different change from all those articles everyone used to write, and those long form media, or even just an hour-long podcast isn't really as popular anymore.
No, it's not, which is kind of a bummer too, because, you want to kind of get in everything in the quick hit form and, do a 15-minute podcast or a 30-minute podcast. But like Adam Ronis and I do the Cash It podcast, and then the two of us, we just kind of keep going off on like all these different tangents. Like the vibe of the podcast is just that you're sitting there listening to two guys who are probably like sitting at a bar right next to each other and just having conversation and giving each other shit all the time. But, when it comes to like the actual, like, if you want, these are the top 5 guys here, these are top 5 waiver claims, top 5 this, then, people are kind of looking out for all of that. So yeah, you kind of have to do things that are going to keep everybody's attention. Like I probably just prattled on for way too long and people are like falling asleep.
Definitely not. No, I mean, this show is all about getting to know you. So by all means, there's no such thing as prattling along too much. But with that was the last of, we'll call it the serious questions. I have some rapid fire questions of your game.
Sure. I love rapid fire. What do we got?
All right.
Let me get my smart glasses on here. What do we got?
Rapid fire questions.
All right, gotta get fancy with the graphics. So I like to theme these to all of my guests. So as you've talked about multiple times, you're from New York City. I believe you're a bit of a Jets fan. I don't know if you want to admit it, but for now, there's some excitement.
So hurtful.
So I theme these. So we're gonna go with if you like it, or if it's a good thing, it's a win. If it's a bad thing, you don't like it, it's a butt fumble.
Come on. You know how sensitive we are. We're very sensitive people, us Jets fans.
At this point, if you can't laugh about it, you're just going to cry. So we're going to have fun with butt fumble.
What are you talking about? I'm not crying. You're crying.
So MetLife Stadium, is that a win or a butt fumble?
Oh, MetLife Stadium, I think, is a butt fumble. It really is. I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know if they've upgraded it at all, but it's a little bit of a hole, kind of a crap thing. I mean, I don't know. Have you been there?
I have not.
So on the 4 corners, they've got these like, it's like basically it's spirals. It's ramps. Look at an aerial view of it. And, it's ramps to walk up from like the ground floor all the way up to, where my seats usually are. And so, but the funny thing is that there are people who like, when you look down those tools, people are like, those spirals, people are like throwing shit down, at the bottom. But what'll happen is like people like throw change down there, and you always have one idiot who's like, I'm gonna collect that change. And as soon as people see him, they just start throwing shit down. And like that's the one entertaining aspect of it. But overall, yeah, I think they need a massive upgrade over there. So I'll butt fumble that one.
I was just thinking it's hilarious that the Buffalo Bills are the only team that actually plays in the state of New York, but people forget that the New York City teams play in New Jersey. So I gotta laugh at that one. So the team name Titans of New York, is that a win or a butt fumble?
I kind of felt like, originally I thought it was a win. I mean, obviously I like the Jets, but the old New York Titans were a great name for them. So I'll give a win on that.
Yeah, I think that's a cool old school name. Darkness Retreats, is there a butt fumble?
It depends on who's doing it. How about that? If I go into a darkness retreat, it's a win. If you go into a darkness retreat, it's a win. When Aaron Rodgers goes into a darkness retreat, it is 100% a butt fumble. That dude is the only person I know who has ever done ayahuasca and come out less cool on the other side. So darkness retreats for Aaron Rodgers is a huge butt fumble.
I mean, allegedly, he was 90% about to retire, and now he's not. So maybe the darkness retreat will be a win. We'll find out.
Probably not.
And the nickname Gangrene, is that a win or a butt fumble?
That's a definite win. That's a definite win. Absolutely. I love the nickname because I appreciate the double entendre of the whole team just dying and falling off.
I do like the name of the color of Gotham green. I think it's a really cool name for that green. And then my last one, Mark Sanchez's Jets career. Was that a win or a butt fumble?
Oh, that's a butt fumble. Come on. That's a butt fumble. He is the butt fumble. It's terrible. It really is. You know, it was like the only nightmare thing that happened in Jets lore that could have actually replaced Marino's fake spike. And if anybody remembers Marino's fake spike, that's what ruined the Jets long ago and far away. They never recovered from that. It spiraled completely out of control. The team was just in shambles. And then, you know, Sanchez with the butt fumble, at least it gave us, you know, that nice blooper highlight.
There you go. Well, you did a great job with these rapid fire questions. It was a win, not a butt fumble. So that's really all that matters. But I appreciate you coming on here, Howard. Thank you for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more. Can you please let everyone know where they can find you and all of your fantastic content?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, hit me up here on Twitter at RotoBuzzGuy. You know, I'm also a Roto Buzz Guy on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. I'm all over fantasyalarm.com. So you can find me over there. You can find me. I host the Fantasy Alarm show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. That's channel 87. The Cash It podcast, which can be found on fantasyalarm.com as well as Spotify, iTunes, Google Pods, anywhere you get your podcast, you should be able to find that. I write a weekly column in the New York Post for fantasy baseball and fantasy football, and then I also I do some pick making and some handicapping over at pickswise.com.
That's great. So make sure you guys check all of that out to see all of Howard's great work. And this is Triple Play Fantasy, so make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Follow along. We have a lot of great interviews this offseason, and the guys are also putting out great content for football, baseball, basketball, you name it. Triple Play Fantasy covers it. Thanks again, guys, and have a good one.
Thank you.